Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Arab summit fails to address important issues. Ahmadinejad's visit to Lebanon stirs controversy. And the Palestinian Authority condemns Israel's loyalty oath. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now.
في سرت أيضا اختتمت القمة العربية الاستثنائية عملها أمس بعد اجتماع دام.
In the Libyan city of Sirte, the Exceptional Arab Summit wrapped up its one-day meeting with 15 Arab leaders in attendance. The ministers agreed to submit proposals on the development of joint Arab action. The League also affirmed its support for the unity of Sudan and Somalia. However, the Palestinian issue, which dominated the summit's agenda, was nowhere to be seen on the Arab ministers' final declaration. In addition, the ministers decided to postpone a proposal to create an Arab Neighborhood League for the next summit, which is set to take place in March 2011 in the Iraqi capital, Baghdad. Our correspondent Mahmoudi Mohammed reports from Sirte.
فيما تم إرجاء النقاش بشأن أهم النقاط التي ظلت معروضة خلال الأيام الماضية.
While the discussion of some key issues was delayed until the next summit, Sudan has enjoyed Arab pledges and support against foreign forces that are trying to undermine its unity, as reiterated by Arab ministers in their final declaration.
السودان حصل على مساعدة من الجامعة قدرها مليار دولار كما حصل.
The Arab League pledged aid to Sudan in the amount of $1 billion. In addition, Somalia will receive monthly grants from the Arab League to help Mogadishu face its growing challenges. However, the issues of the Arab neighborhood of countries, as well as the reform of the Arab League, were omitted from the final declaration, as they were postponed to the next summit.
First, we must adopt the recommendations issued by the High Fifth Committee in its meeting that was held on September 28th in Tripoli. Second, we must praise the efforts that were exerted in the preparation of the protocol pertaining to the development of the joint Arab action. All remarks and notes issued by the Arab ministers must be taken into consideration. We hereby delegate authority to the League's General Assembly, in cooperation with the State Presidency and its mini-ministerial committee, to rewrite the protocol.
Regarding the Palestinian cause, the Arab leaders have praised the efforts of the follow-up committee, which held Israel responsible for sabotaging the peace talks in light of its settlement activities.
نتائج لجنة مبادرة السلام العربية التي عبرت.
The Arab Initiative Follow-Up Committee has clearly voiced its support for the Palestinians and its leadership to halt the talks. This signals an important message and shows a unified Arab position.
رسالة هامة وموقف عربي.
The summit concluded with recommendations that call for optimism. In its first meeting, the ministers gave Israel a one-year moratorium to reach a final settlement with the Arabs. The minister also agreed to reform the Arab League, in addition to pledging aid to Somalia and Sudan in this critical stage of their history. The distinctive feature of the Exceptional Sirte Summit is its ability to attract so many Arab leaders, an indication that the issues agreed on could be very important. Mahmoudi Mohammed, Dubai TV, from the Palace of Conferences, Sirte.
The Palestinian government has described the Israeli government's approval of a so-called amendment to the loyalty oath law as a crown for dark racism and legislation for extremism.
In a statement issued by the Ministry of Information, the Palestinian government said the approval grants are an open invitation to expel the Palestinians, upon whose bodies, lands, and dreams the occupation state was built in the aftermath of the 1948 Nakba. The Palestinian government called on the Security Council and the UN General Assembly to slam the measure as dangerous. Meanwhile, the Israeli Knesset is preparing to discuss the draft law in its parliamentary session today.
and its efforts.
In another development, the Israeli Ministerial Committee for Legislative Affairs approved a draft resolution requiring that a national referendum be held before any withdrawal from East Jerusalem or the Golan Heights.
The bill requires the approval of the Knesset with a majority vote of 60 members in the 120-member Knesset. The bill will be presented to the Israelis in the form of a public referendum.
The Israeli government suspended the bill 3 years ago. Today, the bill passed with 7 ministers in favor of it and 2 against it. In Jerusalem, French Foreign Minister Bernard Kouchner said that his meeting with his Israeli counterpart Avigdor Lieberman last night was difficult. During a joint press conference with his Spanish counterpart Miguel Moratinos, Kouchner said that his talks with Lieberman heated up when he made reference to the Israeli settlement freeze. Lieberman told the 2 ministers to solve Europe's problems before trying to solve the Palestinian problem.
Joining us from Ramallah is our Al Jazeera bureau chief, Walid Al-Omari.
Walid, in light of the debate generated by the latest Israeli draft law, what is expected to emerge out of the Knesset today?
Today marks the opening of the Knesset's winter session, which includes speeches by the parliament's speaker, the Israeli president, the prime minister, as well as the leader of the opposition. The prime minister's speech comes in the form of a political statement that will be voted on by the Knesset. There are 4 no-confidence vote resolutions facing the government, but they will most likely not pass. This is due to the fact that the far-right and extremist parties have the majority in the Knesset. It's also obvious that most draft resolutions on the Knesset's floor appeals to the wishes and aspirations of the far-right wing, which rejects all forms of peace talks with the Arabs, including the Palestinians and the Syrians.
Today's top story, the Knesset opened its winter session 1 hour ago and will soon begin debating 4 no-confidence motions tabled by the opposition. None of those motions is expected to pass. As is customary, President Shimon Peres opened the session saying, "I must tell all the skeptics that even if peace appears impossible, it is achievable." The president went on to say that we stand before historic and unavoidable decisions. It is difficult to make these decisions and dangerous to postpone them. Will we make the right decisions? Asked Peres. Will we make them in time? He created a furor among right-wing MKs when he said, "With all the pain involved, there is a majority in this House in favor of 2 states for 2 nations." In his address, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stressed the Jewish and democratic character of the State of Israel with full rights for its minorities. "There is no other democracy in the Middle East," said the Prime Minister, "and no other Jewish state in the world." Netanyahu reiterated his commitment to the construction of a peaceful, demilitarized Palestinian state alongside Israel, but only, he said, if it is done in a reasonable fashion with Palestinian recognition of the Jewish state and proper security arrangements. Joining me now in the studio is IBA's Jordana Miller with some insights into the Knesset session. Jordana, how strong would you say the ruling coalition in the Knesset is as it opens this winter session?
Well, the Prime Minister's coalition right now is really strong, but it's going to face a number of challenges in the months ahead. Now, the most contentious issue is a deal U.S. mediator George Mitchell is reportedly discussing with Netanyahu to freeze building in the Jewish settlements for an additional 60 days. Approving another freeze is likely to send the left and right-wing parties of the coalition into battle, with Labor fighting for the deal and Yisrael Beitenu and Shas fighting against it. Yisrael Beitenu leader Avigdor Lieberman and Shas head Eli Yishai have both publicly and repeatedly said they won't tolerate another building limit. But Shas may be showing some flexibility. Housing Minister Ariel Atias was quoted saying he would approve a 2-month building freeze, and a Shas official said spiritual leader Rabbi Uvadia Yosef would also back the move. Yishai rushed to contradict that report. Now, the Labor Party is entering the new Knesset session on a somewhat shaky ground. Labour Chairman Ehud Barak has further alienated his party by saying he may support a controversial citizenship bill that requires only non-Jews to pledge their allegiance to a Jewish and democratic state.
يقوم الرئيس الإيراني محمود أحمدينجاد بزيارة إلى لبنان يوم
Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad will visit Lebanon this coming Wednesday. Ahmadinejad will be welcomed officially and warmly by Hezbollah and the Amal movement. However, there were voices criticizing and denouncing his visit and demanding that it be cancelled.
وتطالب بإلغائها.
Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, welcome, welcome. As you say in Persian, Khosh Ahmadid.
منتهى الترحيب بالنسبة للبعض هو استفزاز خالص.
Iranian President Ahmadinejad's visit to Lebanon is warmly welcomed by some, but considered a pure provocation by others. This is one of those official visits that reveal how divided the Lebanese people really are. The visit is official, but reactions to it have been far from the official protocol.
Iran
is the main supporter of the Lebanese Hezbollah, which categorizes itself as the leader of the resistance against Israel. Meanwhile, many parties see Hezbollah as a tool used by Iran and demand the resolution of Hezbollah's weapons issue, which they consider to be a threat to Lebanon's internal safety and an infringement on Lebanon's sovereignty.
ومن الملاحظات ذات الدلالة أن الاستعدادات الشعبية.
It is obvious that most of the local preparations set up to welcome Ahmadinejad were arranged by the Amal movement and Hezbollah, which are organizing a large rally to greet their extremely dear guest.
بالنسبة لهما.
نحن دعونا لاستقبال شعبي على طريق المطار.
We have called for a people's welcoming on the way to the airport, and we, the Amal movement and Hezbollah, have called for a public celebration in Al Raya Stadium to honor our guest on the first day. President Ahmadinejad will go to the south and visit our martyrs, and visit Bint Jbeil for its symbols of strength, liberation, persistence, and victory.
إلا أن ترحيب من يعتبرون حلفاء لإيران في لبنان بزيارة أحمدينجاد.
But other parties criticized this welcome of Ahmadinejad's visit by Iran's allies in Lebanon. These images have been removed by the security forces to prevent any provocation, but the fact that they were posted on the front lines proves that the visit has aroused hostile feelings among a large number of the Lebanese people. These images criticizing the visit began to appear in Tripoli, which is considered one of the most important regions for Sunni Muslims in Lebanon. This has caused fear that the discussion over the visit will extend beyond its political aspect and turn into sectarian friction.
هذا في البعد الداخلي. أما على الصعيد الدولي فقد أثارت زيارة أحمدينجاد موجة.
Meanwhile, on the international level, Ahmadinejad's visit caused a wide wave of criticism from Western countries and organizations, such as the US, the UN, and France. They raised concerns with the Lebanese government over receiving the person considered by the West to be a threat to world security, on top of which is the security of Israel, which feels the most threatened by the visit.
على أي حال ما أثير بشأن هذه الزيارة.
In any case, reactions generated by this visit, even before it takes place, are a guarantee that it will gain much attention, and many people will certainly be watching it closely, both locally and internationally. Karine Tarabai, BBC.
فتح باب الترشح في الانتخابات البرلمانية المقررة.
Candidate nominations are now open for Jordan's parliamentary elections, which are scheduled to take place next month and will elect 120 representatives. But leftist parties, the Muslim Brotherhood and its political wing, the Islamic Action Front, in addition to the National Unity Party, decided to boycott the elections in protest of the one-person, one-vote law, claiming that the law does not reflect the Jordanian people's aspirations.
This candidate is inquiring into an appropriate district for her run in the elections, far away from her rival candidate, whom she is trying to avoid. After the government proposed a new law that reinforced the so-called hypothetical districts, a number of candidates attempted to find out where their rival candidates were nominated.
We face an obstacle, which is choosing the district. Choosing the right district provides more chances for success. For example, it will affect us if we all get nominated in one district while there is a vacant one. I mean, we as nominees have the right to know. When I try to inquire about it, they refuse to inform me. This is wrong. On the contrary, it is the right of the nominee to know who else is nominated in the sub-district.
Some parties are saying that with the absence of the Islamists, the elections seem to be strengthening tribalism in the upcoming parliament. They prefer to boycott the elections in protest of the electoral law, which they say marginalizes parliament.
نحن أعطينا أكثر من فرصة ونظن أن 17 عاما أكثر من كافية.
We have given them more than one chance, and we believe that 17 years is more than enough for the government to reconsider its position on this law, which marginalizes parliament and contributes to tearing apart Jordan's national entity.
تمزيق النسيج الوطني الأردني.
For its part, the Jordanian government resolved the issue created by the absence of the Islamists, who were joined by the left-wing National Unity Party in their boycott of the elections by completely preventing their participation.
We have 45 electoral zones in Jordan, and the new law divided them into a number of sub-districts and completely changes the number of seats allocated to each district. So we clarified this to people, explaining that voters do not need to go into detail. A voter goes to the ballot box on election day and chooses the person they would like. They don't need to go into detail.
Now that the nomination is open, the countdown for the electoral campaign is missing the largest political party in the country. With the absence of the Islamic movement, led by the Muslim Brotherhood and its political wing, the Islamic Action Front, the election process began amidst the confusion of most candidates over the choosing of sub-districts, which they consider hypothetical or hidden, or even secretive as some have described them. Nasir Shadid, BBC, Amman.
From the files of the Iraqi resistance comes the Mujahideen Army, which has claimed responsibility for the targeting of an armored vehicle owned by U.S. security contractor mercenaries north of Baghdad.
أكد الناطق باسم معسكر أشرف التابع لمنظمة مجاهدي خلق الإيرانية المعارضة.
The spokesman for Iraq's Camp Ashraf, home to Iranian opposition People's Mujahideen organization, said that Iraqi government forces attacked the camp's residents using crowbars and batons, injuring 10 of them. The spokesman further said that clashes erupted between Ashraf residents and members of the military committee overseeing the camp's affairs. The residents accused the military committee of opening 2 mobile security command posts operated by members of the Iranian intelligence services in a bid to monitor the residents' activities and mount pressure on them. The spokesman added that a group of residents went to meet with members of the Ashraf military committee to voice their grievance over the new security posts, which are occupying parts of their camp. However, residents were attacked by members of the security forces.
قال تقرير صادر عن الأمم المتحدة إن حالة من التباطؤ الشديد في A UN report said that the flow of displaced Iraqis returning to their homes has slowed considerably since the March legislative elections. The report called on current Iraqi leaders to carry out their responsibilities and provide necessary humanitarian aid to displaced Iraqis inside and outside the country.
7 سنوات أو يزيد من احتلال العراق. لم تهدأ الأمور بعدها ولم يعد العراق إلى ما كان.
More than 7 years have passed since the occupation of Iraq began. However, the security situation has not leveled off or returned to normal. It seems that 7 years were not long enough to persuade displaced Iraqis who are forced to leave their country to return home. According to a UN report, the flow of displaced Iraqis returning to their homes has slowed considerably since the March parliamentary elections, which ended in a political stalemate of the formation of a new government. UN officials said that the number of Iraqis returning home from inside and outside the country has slowed to about 10,000 a month since March, having measured 15,000 to 20,000 a month before the elections.
بعد أن بلغ نحو 15,000 أو 20,000 قبلها.
The UN Secretary General's Special Envoy for Human Rights said that many displaced Iraqis continue to endure harsh living conditions, living without proper shelter, water, or sanitation, and with no regular access to health care and education. The UN Special Envoy urged outgoing Iraqi government officials to provide humanitarian aid to displaced Iraqis inside and outside the country. Since 2003, nearly 1.5 million people have been displaced inside Iraq due to sectarian violence.
مليون شخص داخل العراق هربا من أعمال العنف الطائفي
Many people ended up in random refugee camps and settlements in and around the Iraqi capital, and possibly hundreds of thousands of others were displaced outside the country. 7 months have passed since the March elections took place, and Iraqis are still without a government. Amidst the political deadlock, as Nouri al-Maliki continues to cling to power, amidst the security deterioration, the Iraqi refugee crisis will likely continue to grow, making it very difficult for many displaced residents to return home.
His life resembles an ancient Greek myth. He often loses, yet he never declares defeat. He has embarked on several different paths, but has always considered himself solely a journalist. Ghassan Tueni is our today's figure in this report by Christine Habib.
Destiny runs behind him breathless. He tries to tame it, but one's destiny is fierce and steals away loved ones. He stands under the sky and lifts up his head. What have I done to deserve all this, he asks, then continues down his path. This path began on January 5, 1926, the day on which Jamal Dajani embraced his firstborn and named him Ghassan. In the coming years, he would devote a lot of his writings to his son. Jamal's father passed away when he was 21 years old, and as a result, he became An-Nahar newspaper's editor-in-chief. His first experience in this new path was his coverage of Palestine's events in 1948. With that, he became a war correspondent. But the battleground did not distance him from public matters. Ghassan, who has a degree in philosophy and a PhD in political science from Harvard University, embarked on the political path through the Syrian Social Nationalist Party. He remained the party member until 1957, when he withdrew after a dispute with the party's founder, Antunes Ade.
السياسة هي الأخرى خاضها إذن في سن صغيرة.
So at a young age, he also embarked on a political career. At the age of 24, he was elected as the region of Alay's parliamentary representative. Since then, he has been part of many parliamentary sessions, lasting until 2006, when he took the seat of his son, Gibran, after his martyrdom. Ghassan Tueni is not a compromising politician, and it wasn't difficult for him to give up his position in media and education when his reform plans were confronted with obstacles. When he was the Lebanese ambassador to the United Nations, he demanded the diplomatic summit to let his people live, as the civil war was ravaging Lebanon. The international organization issued Resolution 425, calling on Israel to immediately withdraw from Lebanon. He never abandoned his identity as a journalist. For this reason, he was an outspoken politician. This led him to a number of disputes with other leaders, and his diplomatic immunity was revoked several times. His blunt opposition articles often led him to prison. He wrote editorials from behind bars and hid them in a loaf of bread that was then smuggled out by visitors. He is a man of many identities, but in between being a politician, a university professor, a writer and a publisher, Ghassan Tueni prefers being a journalist. His home is the newspaper. At the height of the war, he would cross the dividing line between East and West Beirut in the middle of the night to check on his publication. And Nahar did not let him down, but illuminated his busy nights on so many occasions.
وكم كانت تلك الليالي كثيرة. أثينا 1954.
Athens, 1954. Ghassan fell in love at first sight with Nadia Hamadi. They married 3 months after they first met, despite the opposition of his family members, such as his brothers, over his marriage to a Druze woman. In their Beit Meri home, Nadia grew a garden filled with poetry and children, Naila, Gibran, and Makram. But this garden faded before its time. In 1963, Naila was diagnosed with an incurable illness and passed away at the age of 7. 20 years later, Nadia, the mother, was laid to rest beside her daughter after having suffered from the same illness. In 1987, their son Makram died in a car accident in Paris. As for Gibran, he was assassinated in 2005, leaving a deep wound in his father's heart, but an immense capacity for forgiveness.
أنا أدعو اليوم في هذه المناسبة لا إلى انتقام
On this occasion, I call today for no revenge, no hatred, and no blood. I call for burying all the hatreds alongside Gibran.
In Beit Miri, Ghassan spends his days at the side of his wife, Shadiya al-Khazan, and his grandchildren. He smokes, listens to classical music, and recalls the times that have become legendary. He looks at pictures from a time long gone and recounts their stories.
South African Nobel Peace Prize laureate Desmond Tutu has retired from public life at the age of 79. Tutu's career has spanned many years and positions, most notably as the Anglican Archbishop of Cape Town and chairman of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the body charged with examining the human rights abuses of the apartheid years. Tutu is well known as an active public speaker, with his most recent appearance taking place at the World Cup soccer games. Upon reflection on his life, Tutu said that introducing Nelson Mandela as president of South Africa was one of his greatest moments. We get more details on the remarkable life of Desmond Tutu in this report.
All of us, black and white together. Desmond Tutu, the South African Nobel laureate whose efforts helped bring an end to apartheid, is retiring from public life. We will be free! The 79-year-old aims to spend time with family and, quote, sip tea in the afternoon. While he'll still support his Peace Foundation, Tutu will step down from a number of posts and no longer give media interviews. The decision comes more than a decade after he retired as the Anglican Archbishop of Cape Town. During the turbulent years of apartheid, Tutu was a vocal opponent of the white minority-ruled system. Tutu's calls for equal rights were unwelcome by the government, which often tried to suppress his activism. But international pressure allowed him to continue, and in 1984, he received the Nobel Peace Prize. Following the end of apartheid, the new president Nelson Mandela appointed Tutu chair of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The commission was charged with examining human rights abuses during the apartheid years. Since then, Tutu has often advised political leaders and began a peace foundation. He will continue working with the Council of Statesmen known as the Elders.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible from support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news. Read our blog. Get transcripts of past shows and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.